What is up, people, and welcome back to another Discord bot tutorial video. So in the last video we took a look at implementing a basic database into our Discord bot. So we had a go at making our own database table, our own schema, and just storing some basic Discord user information such as our username, the server name we're in, and then our server ID. So that should give you a basic idea, some basic experimentation with dealing with a database in a Discord bot. So hopefully you've had a bit of messing about with all the methods and features that NPG SQL offers. Hopefully you had a go at storing and getting information from the database. So now it's time for the major video. If you guys watched episode 12 of the tutorial, you may have remembered that we wrote a profile system. We literally programmed it to store our profile and get our profile if it exists in a JSON file. We wrote some code to level up a user if their level up threshold has reached reached this limit. So for example, it's going to add XP, and then in that add XP method it's going to check if that user has reached their XP limit, such as 100, 200, and if it's reached that, then it's going to increment their level up by 1. So what we're going to do is rewrite this whole system to work with a database, right? Eventually this JSON file is going to get full, it's going to get harder to read from, it's going to get harder to manage. So let's put our profile system in a database. It's going to be a very similar table, but we're going to have stuff like our level, our XP. So it's going to be all these properties in our database. But what's going to be different here is not only are we storing and retrieving that data, we are also going to be changing entries in the database, because bear in mind, when a user sends a message, it's going to increment their level and XP. Like always, I always say this in every video, we have the C# Discord bot template, which is very useful for new people or people that just want to test new features in their Discord bot. So if you would like to make your own Discord bot, or you want to have a nice test bot where you want to test new features, then I've got this nice C# Discord bot template which can easily be cloned into your own new repo. It's just very easy to use, and it allows people to make their own Discord bot in just seconds. So make sure you check this out in the link below. If you read the readme, then it will literally tell you how to set it up all properly. Let's get started with rewriting our profile system. What I'll be doing is I'll be keeping this open in my second monitor, because a lot of this code is going to be the same, but what we're going to be doing is changing the bits that are reading from the JSON file and pretty much implementing a database in the position of that. Do you guys remember from the introduction video that I keep telling you guys, always plan your details before you know what you store in your database? So first of all, let's open up dbeaver and let's create our schema and our database table. What we're going to do then is create a new schema and then a new table inside our database. So let me go to my SQL editor and then let's press new SQL script. So first of all, let's create our schema. So just like the last video, let's say create schema if not exists. So exists, and then I'm just going to call this data, same as last time. Let's call it data. But this time our table is going to be different. So once again, let's create our table. So create table if it doesn't exist, and let's call it in our data schema. So let me make sure to put speech marks around it, because I did get that error last time. So it's going to be the same exact table name, same exact details, but our columns are going to be different this time. So let's do the same thing we had last time. So let's bring up our code from the bot tutorial code. So if we go to our engine, and then there we go, our level system, this D user gives us an idea of what exactly we are storing in our database. So we have a username, our guild ID, and then the avatar link, our XP, and then our level. So these are our 5 columns we've got here, but we don't know our primary key. So our primary key, let's just make it the same as our user number that we put in our last episode, right? So for each user, it's just going to give it a number and it's going to increment it by 1. So user number 1, user number 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So let's set our primary key as the user number once again. So it's quite convenient, right? So let's say user number, and this is once again going to be a big int, right? Because it's a number, so big int, and then primary key. So we've got that sorted. So next up is our user info, isn't it? So first of all is our username. So this is going to be a varchar, just like last time. So there's nothing different here. So username, and then we'll say varchar with no limit, and then this also cannot be null, right? So all of these columns can't be null. So let's get our next is our guild ID. So like that's gonna be a big int once again. So this is going to be our guild ID. So let me say server ID. So let's say big int and then not null. Avatar URL is going to be a varchar and also can't be null. So let's do that. We're going to make level and XP as big ints. So first we'll store the level and then the XP, because that makes sense to do it like that, right? First is the level and then after that is the XP. So let's say level is once again a big int and also can't be null. And then once again XP is a big int and also can't be null. So there we go. So let's once again execute this SQL script, and yeah, there we go. There's you know, like no errors because I put speech marks around that. And then our table user info. So let me view my data, and then there we go. This is what our table looks like. So we've got a primary key of user number, and then our 5 different columns that we've got here. So now it's time to store and get the information from this database. So let's get onto that. So first of all, in this code, let's obviously have a folder for our database stuff. So let me click add and then new folder, so database. So this is all the same as what we're doing last time. There's honestly nothing different here. So let me say DB engine once again. So DB engine, and then let's also have a class for our D user. So let's make that public first. And then we'll also have a class for our D user, which is going to be exactly the same as the one in our, you know, like previous code. So D user, and then I'm just going to copy over the same exact properties that we had in our previous code. So I'm just going to copy that. So copy and then paste. So there we go. So like you know, like our username, guild ID, our avatar link, XP and level. So let me make this capital, so that it follows our naming standard. A lot of this code is going to be very similar, but what we're doing is not reading from a JSON file, but we're going to be reading or storing to our database. So we've got our store user details, we've got check user exists, which basically checks if a user exists in the database. So now we'll have to do like a method for that as well. This is getting the user, so it's going to read the database and then, you know, for each through it, matches the username and then the guild ID, and then it gets the user. Looks like I haven't set an XP threshold here, have I? So I've just hard coded it to 10. So what we'll do then is, what we'll do is get rid of this user info table, because what we can do is add an XP threshold to this table, right? So let's get rid of this, because I've just realized, let's make this better. So what we can do is add one more column saying XP threshold, or let's call it XP limit. And this is going to be once again a big int, not null. So let's set these XP limits to 100, 200, based on what level they are, right? Because that's more realistic. The higher the level they are, the higher this XP threshold will become. So say for example they're level 1, let's set it to 100. If they are level 10, it's probably going to be like 500 or something. So there's our newer table, so our XP limit. And what I'm also going to do is add that to our D user. So let's say public int, and then I'm going to say XP limit. So we'll say get set. So this just sort of gives our leveling system some more realism, right? So that's pretty cool. We need to know our primary key first of all. So just like in the last video, before we even get around to storing and getting user information, we first need to know how many entries or rows there are in this database. So what I'm going to do is make that method. So first of all, let's put in our connection string. So I'll literally just copy that over. It gets total users async. Okay, cool. So first of all, let's make our connection. So once again, using our npg SQL. So let me actually get that installed first. So let's install that and then we'll be right on our way. var con, short for connection. And let's say new npg SQL connection. And that's going to use our connection string right there. So this is from the last episode. So let's say select count, and then put the asterisk in here, and then we say from our database table. So this time it's called data.userinfo. So it's the same as last time. So data.userinfo. Now we need to execute scalar async. So not, like execute non-query async. It's going to be execute scalar async. So let's make our npg SQL command. So let's say using var cmd for, like short for command. And let's make a new npg SQL command. So new npg SQL command. And let's put in our query and our connection. So once again, let's store this in a variable. So let's say var user count is equal to await cmd execute scalar async. And since this was a long, let's do a conversion to int64. So let's say convert to int64 and our user count. So that will get our number of users in our database table over here. So let's put this whole code in a try catch to make it more secure so that the thing doesn't crash. Like honestly, like I'm literally thinking about it. Let's not do -1. So what I'm gonna do is long and a bool. So let's do it in brackets. So I'm going to say bool and then long. And then let's say true over here. So it's successfully done its thing. And then here we'll say false. And then I'm going to say -1 here. In our storing method, it's going to be a similar thing to what we wrote last time. So let's say public async task, and it's going to be a bool this time. And then let's say store user async. And then what we're storing is our duser. So duser user. So first of all, let's get our total users. So let me say var total user is equal to await, and then we'll say get total users async. And like we'll write the check differently this time, not not like how I did it last time. So our total users should have 2 items in it, so a bool and a long. There we go. So we'll say if the total users and then item 1 is equal to, let's say if it's equal to false, because there's not point like there's no point checking if it's equal to true. So what I want to say is not equal to true. Like they will throw a new exception on purpose. If it does fail to get our total users, then don't proceed with this code, because else it will store the wrong primary key. So else, let's increment that by 1. So let's say total users and then item 2 plus plus. So like that will just increment it by 1. So let's start coding our storing information, right? So once again, let's make our connection. So using var connection equals a new npg SQL connection. And then let's obviously open it up. Okay. And then let's put in our insertion query. So let's put in our data into our insertion query, and let's execute non-query async in our npg SQL command, right? So let's say insert into our data.userinfo, and then let's say our column names. So we have our user number, so then we have our level, XP and XP limit. Once again, I can't stress this enough, make sure your spelling is correct. If your spelling is wrong in here, then it's going to throw an error. So let's put in our values. So in a nice concatenated string, let's say our values. So first of all is our user number. So that's going to be our total users and then item 2, because that's our number, right? So say total users item 2. So user.xp limit. Alright, cool. So that's our SQL query done. So let's end it off nicely. Let's end it off here as well. And now let's make our npg SQL command and just execute this query. So let's say using var cmd is equal to our new npg SQL command with our query and our connection. So all we got to do here is just say await cmd and then execute non-query async, because this is just an insertion query. There's no data to retrieve here. So let's just say execute non-query async. And then after that, we say true, right? So what I'm going to do is put this in the try catch once again. So try, and then we'll put this in a so we'll say Control X, Control V, and then after that we say true here. So, and then in the catch, we console.writeLine it. So console.writeLine ex the string, and then we and then we say false, because something's gone wrong here. So alright, cool, that's our store user async, isn't it? So let's once again give this a test first. So store, and let's do that same code that we wrote last time. So let's make a new instance of our DB engine. So let's say var DB engine equals a new instance of our DB engine. And let's make our D user, so just, like a nice test. So let's say var user equals a new D user. And let's just store in some basic information. So in our D user, let's see what we have. So our username comes first. So our username is equal to ctx user and then username. We're going to set as 1 for now. So our level is going to be 1, because all users are going to start at level 1. XP is equal to 0. And then as default, let's set our XP limit to 100. Alright, so let's end that off right there. Okay, so now let's execute our storing method. So let's say var is stored, and let's say awaits DB engine, and then store user async, and then it wants a do user, so we'll just put in our user. So cool, let's just say if is stored equal to true, then we'll say it's been a success. So let's say once again ctx channel and then send message async, and then we'll just say success, because this is only just testing, so I'm just gonna make it short and sweet, right? And then else that will say awaits ctx, and then we'll say fail. Alright, so let's first of all test our store user async code. So everything's all good here, isn't it? Alright, so yeah, okay. Let's so let's start this bot, and let's see what happens. So okay, so let me execute my store command. So let's say store. And it said fail. Okay, what's gone wrong? Okay, so this is new. Okay, so syntax error. So maybe I need to get rid of the semicolon. Yeah, like, is that what it is? Like, I thought you actually need to put in the semicolon. All right, it's fine. So let's restart that. Okay. All right. So maybe I don't need to put in the So maybe I don't need to put in the semicolon at the end, because I'm assuming it's just going to do automatically. All right. Fine. So it's been a success. So there's nothing. There's nothing going on in the console. So if we check our database and refresh our table, then we should get. Yeah, man, that's pretty cool. So there we go. We've got my name, my server ID. There's my avatar link. It's quite long, but yeah, that's just how it is. So like if I click on it, then there we go. It loads that up. That's cool. And then we've got our level, XP, and XP limits. So later on in this video, we're going to be messing with these 3 columns and editing each of the maybe increment this XP by 10, and if it's reached 100, then it's going to increment this level by 1. So it's all similar to how it works in our JSON profile system, but it's going to be in our database this time. So just like in our profile system, in our JSON system, we first need to check if our user exists in our database, so that we know if we need to, get their user information or basically create their user information. So let's write a method to check if a user exists in this database. So what this is going to do is once again a bool, because it's going to say true or false if this user exists, right? So if this user exists in our database, we'll say true, and then if it doesn't, we'll say false. So it's pretty simple, right? So let's say public async task, and then once again it's going to be a bool. And let's say check user exists async. We're going to be checking if a user exists based on their username and our server ID. Let's pass in that. So let's say string username, and then our server ID is going to be a ulong. So let's say ulong server ID. Alright. Var connection is equal to a new NPG SQL connection. So like this should all be like a sort of practice by now. And then let's open our connection. Alright, so this time our query is going to be different. Open up a new SQL script. And let's see what we have to do here. So I only want to check if a user exists, right? I don't want to actually get that user information yet. I only want to check if it exists. So what we say is select and then exists. So this should give us a true or false value. So if it does exist, then it will give us a true. If it doesn't exist, it will give us a false. And then we can say what we want to select. So let's say in brackets, select one from our user info table. So let's say data.userinfo. So let's only pick one user because we are only trying to match our username and our guild ID. So there should only be one entry that we're trying to match here. So let's see where the username is equal to my username as an example. So let me just put my username. And then we'll say our guild ID, so our server ID, is equal to, let me just paste that in. So we'll just paste that in, copy. So it's equal to that. And then let's limit it to 1. And let's execute it and see what it does. So there we go. It says exists, and this is a box that is usually checked. So it's not checked here. So this means it's false. If this box was ticked, then it means it's true. So like that's the sort of terminology in dbeaver that it sort of gives us. Bool is represented by a checkbox in dbeaver. And let's say where username is equal to in single speech marks username. So you know like this is the username that we're passing through, and then our server ID is equal to the server ID that we're passing in over here. So like this doesn't need single speech marks because it is a number, and then we say limit 1. Alright, and then let's end it off. Alright, so this is our query for checking if a user exists. So this is going to get a true or false. So once again, like our total users async, there's like there's a check once again. So let's do CMD and then execute scalar async and then get our true or false. So in our npg SQL command, so using var cmd is equal to a new npg SQL command with our query and then our connection bool and then does exist. And let's execute our scalar async. So let's say await cmd execute scalar async. And since this is a bool, let's cast it as a bool. So let's say bool. Alright, so this should now be a true or false. So based on what it is, let's return a true or false so that the method is satisfied. So if does exist is equal to true, then we return true. Simple as that. Else it's going to be a false. So that means this user doesn't exist. So that's cool. Let's put this in a try catch once again. Let's make a start on making our profile command. So let's get rid of this store command. So let's get rid of all this code and let's rename this to profile. So let's see in our actual code what we're doing in this profile command. So like we're getting all this information and we're storing it into our D user. So let's do that first. So let's make a new instance of our D user. So let's say var user details is equal to a new D user. So let's start storing all of our details in it. So username is equal to ctx user and then username. So let's see. Let's see what happens after. So we're making a new instance of this level engine. We are checking if this user does exist. So let's do that. So let's make a new instance of this type, our database engine, not our level engine storing to a JSON file. So let's say var db engine is equal to a new db engine, and let's execute our method that we wrote over here. Check user exists async, and then we'll pass in our username and server ID. So let's say var does exist is equal to await db engine, and then we say check user exists async, and then we'll pass in ctx user and then username, and then we'll say our ctx guild ID. Okay, so this should now be a true or false. So what happens when does exist is equal to true or false? So if we have a look at our code, so if it's false, then that means this user doesn't exist. So what we're doing here is storing those user details that we made up here. And then if it's false, so this else up here, so if it's false, then it's just going to get our user details from the JSON file. So in our case, if it's true, then all we got to do is pull our user details from the database, and that's where we'll need to write our getUser method. If does exist, and let's see if it's equal to false. So if it's equal to false, then that means here the user doesn't exist. So that means store the information. Else, it's going to assume it's true. So that means get the user details and display them. Var is stored is equal to await and then db engine, and then we say store user async. And what we're passing in here is our user details up here. So user details. It's pretty cool. Okay. So is stored is going to be true or false. So let's check if it's true or false. Has it successfully stored our user details to this database? If it hasn't, then it's displayed like a nice error message saying, you know, the error happened, blah, blah. And then if it has successfully stored, then let's display like a success message. So if is stored, so let's say if it's equal to true first, then let's say, you know, like successfully stored your, you know, details. So let's make like a nice embed for that. So let's say var success message equals a new Discord embed builder. We'll set the color to you know, green, because you know it's, you know, because it's a success, right? In the context of a profile, let's say successfully made your profile, please execute profile again to view it, because at that point our profile is stored, and then it's going to go to the else statement. Okay, so that's all done then. So if does exist equals false, then it's going to try and store the user details, and then if it's successfully stored the user details, then it'll send like a nice success message, public async task. And this is going to be two things. So first of all, let's check if this method has successfully done its job. So it's going to be a bool first, and then what we need to do is get the actual, you know, like user information. So let's say duser as these two return types. So let's say get user async, and once again we are getting a user by their username and their guild ID. So once again, let's do everything that we did last time. So let's open our connection first. So using var connection equals a new npg SQL connection, and let's open it. Okay, so now let's execute the query to get our specific user information from the database. So it's going to be very similar to the one we wrote last time. And then we put in our check. So what are we checking for to get this data? It's going to be our username and our server ID once again. So we say where our username is equal to the username that we're passing in. So our username and our server ID is equal to the one we're passing in. So let's say server ID. So like there's our query to get our specific user data based on what username and server ID we pass in. So now we need to execute this query and get each of those informations and pass it into our duser. So let me just quickly create a duser over here. So duser, and then this is going to be like the result to return. And then yeah, so let's execute this query. So using var command equals a new mpg SQL command with our query and our connection, and then let's say execute reader async, because this is where we're going to be reading each of our database tables and getting each of its values. So let's make our reader, and let's say awaits cmd execute reader async. Okay, it's finally time to get our user information and put it into our duser variable. So let's first of all make a new instance of the duser. So like the result is equal to a new duser, and let's put in our different sort of data types. So our first one is our username. So our username is a string. So what we'll do is say reader and then get string, because it's of type string. So for each data type that you've got here, we have to execute the method associated to that. So if it's a date time, then we say execute reader dot get date. If it's a time, then we say get time span, etc, etc. So for our username, first of all, it's going to be get string, isn't it? And it's going to be at position number 1, isn't it? Because I made that mistake last time where I sort of assumed that that this primary key doesn't count, but it actually does. So it's going to be at position number 1. So get string 1. Okay, next up is our server ID. Okay, so guild ID is equal to reader, and then it's going to be get int64, and then at position number 2, and then let's convert it to a ulong. So ulong. Our level is not going to be like some massive number like this. So instead of saying get int 64, let's say get int 32, because it's a smaller number. So let's say get int 32 at position number 4. So yeah, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, isn't it? So XP is now 5. So that's going to be get int 32 as well, isn't it? Yeah, it's quite a small number. So XP, whoops. So XP is going to be reader get int 32 once again, because it's a small number. It's not a ulong like int 64. And then our XP limit is going to be the same thing, get int 32, and then at position number 6. So, and obviously once again, let's put this whole code in a try catch. So try, and then we catch an exception, catch exception ex, and we console.writeline it, and then we say false and then null, because something's gone wrong. Okay, let's implement this into our profile command now. If it's false, then it's going to store our it's going to store our user information. So if it's true, then let's get our user information and display it in a nice embed. So let's say var user details. So or let's say the retrieved user, and then let's await that method. So await get user. So it's going to be our DB engine get user async based on their CTX user username, and then it's going to be CTX guild and then ID. It's just going to get the user and then just display their details. Okay, let's check if it's true and false. So let's say if the like the user and then item 1 is equal to true, then that means it's got the user details. So else, let's just display like a nice error message. So let's do the error message first, in the odd chance that it does fail, which I doubt it, because we've set up our database properly in this code. So if it's true, then let's get our user details and put them into a nice embed. So let me make like a nice embed that's very similar to what we made in here. So yeah, it's going to add a field for our level and then add a field for our XP. Let's make that look a bit better. So let's say var profile embed, equals a new Discord message builder. So let's say like the retrieved user, so let's get their username, so item2 and then username, and let's say their profile. Alright, cool, and let's see what we did in this embed. So, and then the avatar link. Okay, that's just easy enough, isn't it? So let's put the same thing that we did here. Yeah. Okay, and yeah, so and then let's put in our fields for our level and our XP. So let's say add field, and let's put in our level, and the value is going to be the user item2, and then it's going to be our level, and this is an int, right? So let's say toString. So that's simple enough, right? So let's add one for our XP. So this is going to be our XP. Let's put it as like a fraction. So let's say how much XP. Let's say how much XP out of our XP limit do we have? So for example, 32 out of 100 or 64 out of 100. So let's put it as that so that the user knows how much XP they've got till they level up. So that's going to be the user item2.xp, and then let's put a dash, so like the retrieved user item2 XP limit. So like this will get our XP, and then it will literally compare it to our XP limit. So it'll be like 6-100, or I don't know, like 32-200, etc, etc. So let's end it off there, and I think we've got everything set up there, haven't we? Yeah. So our username's profile, like, and then put their profile picture, and then put their level and then XP, which we've improved like this, and then let's send it off. So await ctx channel.send message async, and then let's say the profile embed. All right, so my user information is already in this table. So let's give this profile system a test. So let's open Discord, and then let's say profile, and let's see if it gets my profile. And looks like something went wrong. Yeah, okay. So let's see. Can't cast database type big int to string. So something's going wrong when it converts over here. So big int to string. Let's just try it from 0 to 5 and see if it works, because it's something to do with that. So let me execute profile again. Okay, so that time it worked. So why did it work then? Because that time it didn't assume the primary key. So it's going to get 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, I see why. Okay, so I see why it's like that, because I'm doing the select query like this. So it's going to assume these columns as my array. So okay, that's why username is meant to be 0. I see. So it's not going to count the primary key, because I didn't even specify it in my query. So my username is going to be entry number 0. So okay, there we go. Yeah, okay, so like they've just executed profile. So there we go. It successfully made their profile. So it's gone through that first if statement, hasn't it? So it's gone through that first if statement. If does exist is equal to false, and for them it is false, because they like their user details don't exist. And if we check our database and refresh it, then there we go. It's got their new primary key of number 2, because there is already one existing. So it's just going to add 1 to it, and then it's put in their server ID, their like their username, their like profile picture, and etc, etc. And then if I ask them to like do it again, so let me ask them to execute profile again, then there we go. As you can see, it like this works perfectly, man. This is a massive W for us. So far, what we've done in this video is we have pretty much migrated our like existing profile system to work from a JSON file to a database. So in the next video, we're going to be implementing our leveling up system. We're going to modify values in our database. So our XP is going to be changed a lot, and so is our level. So we need to program these 3 columns to change. For example, when someone levels up, I need to change the value in this level column. When someone gains XP, I need to change this XP column. When someone's XP limit changes, I need to change this column as well. So that's what we'll do in the next video, is implementing our leveling up system. So our profile system is pretty much complete. So we've got a nice sort of, you know, profile command here, and it's going to, you know, like create a profile if it doesn't exist, and then if it does exist, then it's going to get their user details and it's going to show it as we do here. So pretty cool. Nothing in this code is new, to be honest. The only new things that we're doing is implementing our database SQL queries. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Once again, if you have any questions for me, make sure to leave a comment below or join my Discord server where a lot of the things will be going down. If you have any errors or, you know, like stuff that you need to fix in your Discord bot, then please join our Discord server, because that's where we'll get to help you out the most efficiently. So like, aside from that, make sure you guys like the video, subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you lot in the next one. Peace out.